Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and today we have Jen Senesi and Will Foxley, a smaller show than usual, but I feel like it's, 10x the talent pool here today. All the best people, all my favorites. Don't tell Zach. Let's hope he doesn't watch this episode. No, we will miss him while he is gone, but we are holding down the fort Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday this week before we take a break for Thanksgiving. So let's dive into it. Will, I'm throwing to you to start off with. What's going on with the Fed?
I'm just going to say really quick, I'm a little frustrated with this 3-screen panel. I have a very awesome staircase over here that's not being highlighted, and that's the only reason I'm on the show.
It's the only reason Will shows up every day.
It can kind of, it really is. It's the only reason I'm on here. Now, let's turn to crypto stuff. It's Monday. We got to be serious. It's time to talk about the Federal Reserve. So Jerome Powell is being renominated by President Biden to the position of chair of the Federal Reserve. This is a pretty big position, obviously. You are the head of the central bank of the U.S. for the next 4 years. He was first appointed by Trump in 2018. That was a pretty contentious relationship there for a while, especially during the first days of the pandemic when the Federal Reserve was taking a lot of initiative in the money markets, trying to bolster the economy. And we've seen a lot of pressure recently with the inflation crisis that's happening. Of course, this year, the Reserve and other government agencies were saying, hey, this is inflation, but it's transitory, it's going to go away. Well, we saw last month that it was at 6%. It doesn't seem like that is slowing down at all, but President Biden is going to stick with his man at the helm. He's not going to throw him aside. Naomi, what's your take on this? It seems like it'd be maybe good for markets just to have some sort of stability. Like you want to have the ability to kind of go with the status quo, know what the leadership is like, instead of just keep swapping back and forth. But at the same time, we're Bitcoiners, so we don't really want someone to be at the top of the stack.
Well, when they talk about this in terms of, the S&P responded favorably to this, so it's good news for the markets. And they say that as markets as if like it's good news for the people. What this means is they expect Jerome Powell will continue to print astronomical amounts of money. And where's the first place in the economy that benefits from this money injection? It's the stock market. So whoever gets that first money injection basically gets money redistributed to them at the expense of everyone who loses their purchasing power in society. So that is probably why markets are reacting favorably, because they know that more money is going to continue to get injected into the stock market. I mean, it's just interesting the way all of this is phrased. Like, it's like, he helped steer us through the worst downturn in modern American history. Are they going to say that, he helped steer us through some of the worst inflation we've ever seen? Like, they're talking about this like he is the savior here, rather than, one of the people who caused all of this. So when we look at the Federal Reserve, the amount of crazy amount of control that they have over our lives, and a lot of people never really think about how much control they have over our lives, but they have complete control over monetary policy, which affects all of us. And so I think that portraying him as the savior in all of this is crazy to me. And it was government in general that really created this downturn. I think that COVID is being scapegoated a lot in this. I'm sure that there would have been a market downturn, and I do not think it would have been nearly this bad had all these government mandates not come into place. So I'm not particularly happy that we have we still have Jerome Powell, but I'm also not happy that we still have a Federal Reserve. So that's kind of where I stand on this. I'm with Ron Paul. I think we should end the Fed. At least we need to audit the Fed, because all the stuff they're doing there is so opaque, and we just can't get an audit organized by Congress. They just will not vote for it, because guess who's getting paid to not vote for an audit of the Fed? But let's move on to Jen and get away from all of these hard truths.
We got to show the meme.
Yeah, we have to show the meme. We have a comment. And
I mean, Jen, because your hand went up, not next
My hand went up, I know.
Yeah.
So just off the back of what you were saying, Naomi, there's it's not a quote, but the article said that Biden said, with Powell as chair and Brainard as vice chair, he expects that the duo will help keep the focus on low inflation, stable prices, and provide more employment for the American people. And my initial reaction was just like the sideways eyes emoji. Like, has the focus been on low inflation? It just feels like we're saying a lot of things, but when we look at what was actually done, the two don't match up. I know we're going to take a look at that meme, but I found a tweet from Phil Geiger that I wanted to read out. I didn't send it to Control, so you guys can't see it, but you'll get the point. They tweeted, Powell is a great pick. He has printed more US dollars than anyone else in history, so he has the most experience at printing more US dollars. So just a lot of sarcastic people on Twitter this morning. And before I kick it to Will to talk about the meme, I do need to say that David Lynn on YouTube said you need to change that pumpkin for a snowman behind you. We're done with the pumpkins.
Yeah, we're done. Well, no, we're not yet. It's not.
Seems a bit harsh.
Thanksgiving.
It's not Thanksgiving.
Yeah. No, it's not Thanksgiving yet. I'm sorry. I'm Canadian, so I have a pass.
YouTube chat, you were overruled and dismissed. That was a terrible suggestion, and please do better next time. We will keep our Thanksgiving decorations up until after Thanksgiving. Thank you. My goodness, David. All right, sorry. Will, continue, please.
No, I think also, as the Colorado on the show, I'll be the snow expert, and there's been no snow here yet, so I wouldn't even be able to make a snowman. But just to counter Naomi's point, just to do a little devil's advocacy here, the Federal Reserve has two mandates: stable prices, which we have not seen this year, and full employment, which we actually have seen a lot of good employment this year. In fact, most people are quitting their jobs because there's other opportunities they want to look for. So it's funny to see that right now we have one of the two happening. You could argue that the Reserve it's doing its job on some level. Not going to bite, Naomi?
Its job is wrong. it's a ridiculous mandate, and now they're adding all these other mandates to it. They're like, now climate change is somehow a part of monetary policy, and it's like what is not going to be part of the purview of this unelected group of bureaucrats controlling our lives? You know, it just gets scary how much they already control. So I know you're baiting me into another rant, and I fall for it. It works. Line and sinker every single time. But yeah, I mean, we don't need a Federal Reserve anymore. We don't need a group of elites to control monetary policy. We have Bitcoin. We have cryptocurrencies that are determined by code, and it is a democratization of power rather than the centralization of power in the hands of a few. This is why we love crypto. This is why crypto is the future, because eventually it's going to come a time where people look at their money and they say, I have lost 98% of my purchasing power holding this for the last 100 years. Why would I hold it for another 100? And they're all going to jump ship, and the government is terrified of it, which is why Jerome Powell constantly is talking about how we cannot allow this crypto thing to destabilize the economy. And that's the reality of it. It is eventually going to take over. But let's move to an area where it has really started to take over. El Salvador. They're creating a Bitcoin city. Let's dive into the details of this. So apparently they're going to build an entire city based on the largest cryptocurrency, which is Bitcoin. And it's going to be a fully fledged metropolis. It's going to have residential, commercial areas, restaurants, an airport, port and rail service. It's going to be laid out in a circle like a coin. They're going all in here. And it's going to be this plaza that will host a huge Bitcoin symbol. And it will have no income, property, capital gains, or payroll taxes. I'm a big fan of that part of their plan. And apparently they're going to be funding it with some really weird methods, which we can break apart in a second. But one thing to mention is it's going to be right next to this volcano, which is basically going to be providing the geothermal energy to power the entire city, which again is kind of interesting. So it's on the one hand, very interesting situation. Then we dive into how they're funding it, which is interesting. But I want to throw to the group for your take to start off with. Jen, what's your take, just a broad view on all of this?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. I was reading this and I just pictured this futuristic metropolis. And I can't believe, it's weird to say in November that I still can't believe that El Salvador is moving so quickly. And right when I think that they've done everything they possibly could do with their announcement of Bitcoin as legal tender, they go and they do something say they're going to be building an entire city in 2022. I wonder how the Salvadorian people will feel about this if and when we hit a bear market. I think this is all very exciting, and we talk about Bitcoin in El Salvador and how it's going to bring financial freedom to the people. And I just wonder if they really understand the volatility and if enough is being done by the government to educate them on that. I think that the basing the city by the volcano for I want to pass this off to Will to explain how we're going to use this renewable energy for mining. But I think it's really interesting, and I think a lot of other developing nations could take a note from this. I think Bitcoin mining has the opportunity to bring energy to people who previously didn't have access to energy, and that's really cool. But Will, I'm gonna let you take it away from here because I don't have anything else to say about mining, and you have a lot of insight.
Yeah, before I get to the mining comment, I just want to highlight what you said. The bear market aspect it's like frightening. It's frightening to think of what could happen if there is like a 90 to 70% drawdown like we've seen historically across the crypto space, but also specifically with Bitcoin, since they seem to be so focused on only Bitcoin or this Bitcoin city. The like repercussions from that would be really extreme. I'm assuming like there's some smart people involved with this. Like the Blockstream team is very capable, and they've been doing this for years now. They've been through multiple bear markets, so I think they know what they're doing. But I think it'd also be a huge PR nightmare for the Bukele regime to have like a huge drawdown and put so much time and money into this Bitcoin thing and to see that happen. And there's already been a lot of frustration with the Bukele regime around how Bitcoin is being used on the ground there and why there is adoption of Bitcoin when there's so many other pressing needs at the moment. So just to highlight what you said, like I think that's a very valid take. The Bitcoin mining side, I think it's pretty simple. Geothermal energy is necessarily renewable just because it comes from the Earth's crust, and you can just capture it to spin a turbine, and then you just plug in Bitcoin miners to it. For the city itself, it's interesting. I know there's a lot of the renewable geothermal energy in the like Central American region of the world, and so it makes sense for them just to do that. Makes sense for them just to plug in Bitcoin miners, maybe make some money there on the side. The thing that I'm very curious about is how they're like centrally planning a city here, and that's always just kind of, it's not very Bitcoiny, but they're doing it, and I guess like they're raising money to do it, so it's not like they're taking money out of the pockets of taxes or whatnot.
Well, let's dive into how they're raising money. And let's dive into the details of that. So it is a $1 billion tokenized bond. $1 billion in tokenized bonds. It will be over 10 years. It will be US dollar denominated. We'll pay 6.5% initially. And following the lockup period of 5 years, El Salvador will start to sell its cryptocurrency holdings and pay an added dividend to bond holders. By the time that 10 years have elapsed, the annual percentage yield will be 146%, said Samson Mao, based on Blockstream's model that the price of Bitcoin will be at $1 million in 10 years, or in the next 5 years, 5 years, $1 million. That's the projection they're coming out with. And indeed, they will be using $500 million of these proceeds to buy Bitcoin, locking it up for 5 years. So what is actually going on here? Because there's a lot of technical sounding jargon. Basically, you would lend Bukele money so that he can go and trade Bitcoin, but he's only going to trade half of it, and he's going to pay you back, and it's backed by the full faith of the El Salvadorian government that you would be giving them money and trusting them with your money and getting paid back with amazing yields based on a $1 million price prediction for Bitcoin. I don't see anything wrong with this plan at all.
Good.
So,
me neither, Naomi. I mean, when you put it like that, it makes sense.
Let's dig into this. He's literally they're presuming that Bitcoin is going to go up an astronomical amount, right? And they're saying, but trust us with your money, a government, dictatorship, by the way, that has seized control and kicked out all opponents and put our own people in place. Let's trust us with your money instead of investing that money straight in Bitcoin. I mean, I don't know who is going to go for this. I would scratch my head if they are going to go for this. This seems like a very high risk proposition because you're also relying on the high risk proposition of, Bitcoin future price predictions. But on top of that, you add having to trust the El Salvadorian government on top of that. It's definitely not something that I will be buying into, not investment advice. Do your own research, but it does seem strange to me. Will, what's your take on their money raising adventure?
You laid it out pretty clearly there. I think another interesting point I saw online, of course, was that we have Bitcoiners like lending to a government, and that is like the antithesis of Bitcoin, right? So like we're giving money to a regime which does have a track record of not protecting human rights, and we're allowing them to build Bitcoin cities and things like that cater to a very specific audience. And there's a lot of people in El Salvador who I don't think are going to look at this extremely favorably. So I have a lot of questions. It just seems like there's seems like the bad way to roll this all out. It doesn't seem great. It seems like the story is kind of compounding and getting a little bit worse. And hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it all works out. I mean, governments issue bonds all the time. And if the math makes sense and they can figure it out, that's good. But at the same time, El Salvador is kind of in a weird state. They have issues with the IMF and other central banks around the world who are not wanting to lend them money now because of this Bitcoin thing. It seems they're almost like compounding it, doubling down on that bet, almost like a leveraged trader who's kind of sunken in too deep and trying to get a little bit farther ahead.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if like Elon Musk was like, hey, I'm putting out a bond for my future Mars colony and we're going to build a city, and it's not going to be run by government, but we'll have like code and decentralized autonomous organizations. Like I can see that potentially happening. I'd probably invest in that. It sounds a lot more interesting than a dictatorial regime that doesn't like any opposition and has with great threats, kicks people out in parliament, etc. So it's an interesting situation. Meanwhile, love what they've laid out in terms of the no tax and geothermal energy. I think that's super cool. Just be careful with your investments, people. So let's move over to the next topic. Jen, what's going on in the luxury world of NFTs?
Before we head on over to luxury and NFTs, I want to say I love that every opportunity we have to bring up Elon Musk, that we take it. I just really appreciate it, in this half an hour every day.
Who picks it up? Who picks it up? I don't feel like I pick it up that much. I think it's like a Naomi thing and a Jen thing.
It's me. Government rants and
why are you against us?
Elon Musk is gonna build our future Mars colony.
All right, let's head on.
Kills me.
I know. Let's head on over to the metaverse. So metaverse gaming and NFTs could account for 10% of the luxury market within the next 8 years. Now, this is according to a research note by Morgan Stanley. The bank expects that the NFT market will grow to around $300 billion by 2030. Now, Will, I know how much you love when banks release these research reports. So I'm going to kick this off to you, and then we can dive a little bit deeper into what they've said about the metaverse and NFTs. But what did you take away from this article?
Not a ton, to be honest. Not a ton of information I gleaned from this. I guess it's interesting to see that there's more attention to the NFT marketplace in general. From my understanding of like the fashion industry, which I don't have a ton of knowledge about besides just some friends who work in the LA clothing industry, there's not a lot of money on the digital side at all. And that makes sense, right? It's all physical. And the only digital side you have is probably like the marketing element of it, or like drop shipping, maybe set up like a quick boutique shop online. And that's about it. And if you were able to add some sort of digital component to it, where you're wearing clothing both in physical life and online, that would necessarily kind of open things up a little bit more. I saw one thing, well, I guess Nike did this a little bit ago, where they released a shoe that you could purchase and then also have your avatar wear in the metaverse, which is pretty interesting that you kind of combine those two worlds together. And I think it makes sense going forward if this metaverse thesis kind of plays out. Like, I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't know if it's going to take off, and I kind of don't want it to take off, but
you said that about NFTs, and NFTs really took off. So I don't think we can trust your...
Yeah, I said I don't want it to take off. I didn't say it wasn't going to. Actually, I think I did say it wasn't going to a few times. That's all I have for you on this topic.
Well, I want to dig into that. Why don't you want the metaverse to take off? What have you got against it?
I just like in real life interactions more. I think they're more meaningful. It's simply it.
Sure. And now we literally have screens we sit in front of and type to people. You don't think that enhancing that experience that we already spend like most of our lives doing will be a better way to interact digitally? Because digital interaction isn't going away, but it can be made better.
It can be. Yeah, I agree. But slippery slope. I'd rather just keep it simple. I'll send you an email and then I'll talk to people in physical life. here I'm at.
Are you saying that this show is not meaningful to you?
Yeah, he doesn't want to hang out with us in the metaverse, Jen, but you and I, we're going to hang out, we're going to have so much fun, and we're going to buy so many luxury products in there.
We are.
That's really the future. I mean, it's interesting reading this article and hearing these predictions. People are just really diving into this metaverse concept now. And it's interesting because, I mean, we've had like Google Glass was an epic failure back in the day, and just like all this technology that is leading towards something like a metaverse that just came too early, and people were like, nah, this is weird, don't want to do this. And then suddenly, as our lives become more and more digitized, as our remote work situation just moves further in the decentralized direction, we're starting to envision a world where this may become a reality. And I think that has just led to a tremendous amount of resources being invested into this, and predictions from Morgan Stanley saying by 2030, 10% of luxury market goods, NFTs could account for them. So it's just a very interesting situation that everyone is piling into this. I watched this TikTok video yesterday where this guy's like, hey, this is how you buy a plot of land in the metaverse. And I'm like, it's doting. Because like, again, I'm going to go back to Neil Stephenson. You read Snowcrest, you learn about how Hero, first got this amazing plot of land in their metaverse, was just an early coder who was working on this tech and just got in early. And, years later, it becomes this most coveted spot of everyone in the metaverse. They're all trying to get into his like nightclub there. And so it's like interesting to see, like, is this just vaporware? Is this something where you'll buy this plot of land in this kind of like weird block built metaverse that's kind of janky and strange, and it just ends up being nothing? Or you could be an early investor in what could be everything. We just don't know. And I'm very curious to see how much people, latch onto this. But Jen, I'll throw it back to you.
I almost bought a plot of land in the metaverse yesterday. I was really just bored. Didn't happen, but it was a real FOMO. On the topic of luxury brands, I mean, I think a lot of luxury brands have been trying to play in the NFT space. Burberry launched some digital clothing that we spoke about earlier this year. And Louis Vuitton launched like a metaverse-esque game where you could kind of like go through this forest and look for Louis Vuitton assets. It was very strange. I tried to play it. It was boring. And so I think they are trying. I think we still have a little bit of a ways to go. But what was interesting, Morgan Stanley also released that investors are looking at how to get exposure to the metaverse. And they're saying that Facebook is the best way to get exposure to the metaverse. And I thought that was really interesting because while Facebook is building a metaverse, there are also other ways to get exposure to a metaverse in maybe a more decentralized way. Naomi, I'm going to kick this back down to you. Like, what do you think of this? Should people who want to get exposure to the metaverse be looking at Facebook stock?
I mean, gosh, like if you'd asked me whether to buy in Facebook stock like a year ago, I would have said no. If you look at the way the numbers are going when they release their reports, and you just see that the audience is getting older and older, younger people aren't embracing it. And it doesn't look like it's a very strong trajectory, but now they've done this major pivot, which is really interesting, going towards something which I do think is the future. And they've always been like pretty amazing with staying on the cutting edge of tech. Most of Silicon Valley is built on Facebook tech that they've open sourced and maintained. And so they do a lot to contribute to that world. So I don't know. I mean, I won't be buying any. I'm definitely looking at some of the tokens that are fueling the decentralized metaverse economies. I think when you have a controlled environment that is centralized, I really don't like the censorship implications of that, but I do recognize how that does take away a lot of the friction for new people. So they're probably going to get like a mass market share in the decentralized options. It's going to take a lot for them to be competitive with a product that we know is going to be polished coming out of Facebook. So it's a real interesting question. I always like to make my investments line up with my value system as well. So I think that's also something people should keep in mind, whether this is the future that they want to be supporting or whether, there's a different future out there that could be better. So interesting big questions to think about. But let's wrap up there. Let's wrap up for the day and go and enjoy the rest of our Monday. But stick around if you are interested in more crypto stuff, because we got a lot of it at CoinDesk. You can head over to the CoinDesk website, check out all the articles, stick around for 3 p.m. with All About Bitcoin with Christine Lee. Tomorrow we got First Mover at 9, and then it's back here with us on the Hash at 12 as always. And we love seeing you guys there. We got some nice fighting back and forth in the chat about Bukele's a dictator. No, he's not. He's great. No, he's terrible. So keep that up. I love reading all of that stuff. I think it's super interesting. And thanks for tuning in, guys. It's great to have you here. And Will, Jen, see you tomorrow.
See ya.
See you.